Welcome to another Truck Talk with the Concrete Yogi. I am excited about this one. I'm just gonna let loose for you guys. It's inspired by a conversation that I had today in my teacher training this morning, and we started talking about the subtle body. We started talking about karma and karma phala, action, reaction, cause and effect. We talked about ego. It was a nice day. It was a good 2.5 hour session where a couple yamas were discussed and the Shukshma Sharira was started. The yamas we were just finishing up, we had to go through brahmacharya and parigraha, so it was a lot of talk about not coveting, not claiming, not reaching or longing or being tempted. You get the drill. You get the idea. But during this conversation, the student who has done this a few times now, he makes sure he reminds me, and it's a healthy reminder, and it's one that I love hearing because it's something that I think about every single day, that it must be very rare for these kinds of topics to be discussed in a teacher training, because so much of what you see of yoga is done on the mat, so much of the trainings must be done on the mat. And he's right. They're right. And it couldn't be more right, unfortunately, is that a lot of it is missed right now, because if people believe the practice, like I said in a previous video, if people believe the practice to be on the mat, well, that's all they're going to teach. And when it comes time for them to be the one, oh my goodness, when it comes time for them to be the one to do a teacher training, that is then what they perpetuate. And rather than getting a whole flock of teachers out into the world that are going to defend the practice and protect the practice and hold true the sanctity of the practice, instead we get a lot of people that are okay with doing the opposite, but they don't know. They literally don't even know any better. They think that they're teaching yoga because that's what they were taught. They paid that money, they got the teacher training certification, it says yoga teacher on it, so they think that must be what I learned. But then there's so much more, and it kind of overwhelms you when you do study it as a student. You're overwhelmed. You're like, whoa, I'm going to try to teach this. And I'm there every day, guys. I'm there every single day. I'm overwhelmed by the role. I don't downplay that at all. Any student that knows me knows I can't claim any of this. I haven't come up with any of this. It saved me, so I'm going to protect it. I'm going to discuss it. I think to my last breath, that kind of thing. So when it comes to like me being offended by how other people teach or anything like that, I know it's not their fault, right? It's not because of their choice. They didn't choose to remove the sanctity from the sacred science, to remove the glories from the sutras. They didn't try. They just honed in on what they were taught, and that's fine. That's up to them. But the question arises, why isn't it taught? Well, like I said, they weren't taught it. Well, why? Where was the break in the chain? Where was the break in the link of teachings? That game, telephone, where we all stand in line as kids, or we say one thing to the next, and then by the end of the line, no, that's just not at all what happened. And at some point along the way, someone whispered exercise. Someone whispered stretching. What? We went from sacred science, philosophy, stories and songs, morals and ethics and principles that can guide not just an individual but society, that can heal hearts and save souls. It's so glorious. And someone whispered stretching. Now, if you were the next person and you heard stretching, that's fine. You're going to keep saying stretching down the line. But at some point, do you not ask why it's a Sanskrit word? Why is it yoga? Why don't we just call them stretching classes? Why is it called yoga? Okay, if it's an ancient language, why? What does that mean? Okay, what does that mean? All right, how do I do that? Can you teach me more about that? Oh, it's psychology? But I'm me. I am me. And I am my mind. And I am. Okay, well, can you help me break that chain? Can you help me dissociate and discern and be healthy in all these practices and do them in a way that's proper and and appropriate for where I am in life and what I need to accomplish, and all those things could have been contemplated had we not just made it into that one or two exercise or stretching. Because now it's yoga and stretch, or stretch and whatever, stretch and something, exercise and breathe. You know, that's what people think that yoga is. It's come down to online trainings now. It's difficult. It's difficult. 13 to 20 years. That's what these people would go through, the yogis of old. 13 to 20 years of study before they could even consider themselves a teacher. Now we do it in 200 hours. So yeah, they wanted to make a dime. And they made the training and the Yoga Alliance, right? That bureaucratic, overwatching, I don't even know what, bliggity blank blank. They never made a correction. They were okay. They're fine with it, really. They get more and more money. You think that it's not a business? You think that greed's not involved? 200 hours? It's in gyms. You know? So, the student stirred me up. Well, can you make a change, Dom? Well, I'm a pebble. I'm a pebble in the pond. That's what I told him. I'm just a pebble. I'm trying. I could try harder every day, but we're up against it. We're up against it. You know, there's Lulu Duca and Lemon Mats and Lemon Studios, and you know, they're everywhere. We're up against it. But the truth wins. Don't get me wrong. I'm not worried. I'm not worried in the slightest. Truth wins. The right practice, the people that are meant to find the practice, they find it. The practitioners that are meant to find each other, they find each other. The teachers and students that are meant to connect, they always connect. Because that part is not up to us. That part's of the divine. That part's of the cosmos. And that connection that we have with it. That integral connection where we just do our best. We do our actions. We do our karma. And that was the other part of this conversation. When we're sitting there talking about karma and karma phala, he actually came up, he answered. Later on in the lesson, he answered. He said, I understand now when you talk, it's because people wouldn't want to put in this karma. They wouldn't want to put in the work. I can't blame them. I missed a few years of sleep. You know, hours and hours of singing mantra. Boring, right? That's how a lot of people would think of it. Not me. Not many throughout the millennia have thought of it as something physical. So in like the true terms, in the true, you know, throughout the ages, we were much more aligned with the yoga as psychology, the yoga of philosophy. Some people weren't calling it yoga. Why would they? It's not their language. They had their own way to talk about it. They had their own teachers with their own stories, but they talked about it. And yes, did the Vedas make it much more scientifically derived, honing in on very, very specific and subtle teachings, so that it was removed of dogma, so that it was removed of language and any kind of division or visualization, because that could be off-putting to different cultures. Yeah, that's what the Vedas did. So that's why it's kind of seen as the first of these sacred sciences, these spiritual sciences. Science? Sciences? Science? Sciences? Is science plural? I don't know, guys. I'm losing it. When you're talking about these things, because we're talking about ego, we're talking about avidya, we're talking about the kleshas and asmita and viveka, discernment, vairagya, dispassion. These are huge technical terms. So when you start bringing them up to people and they see the influence that it's going to have, some have already seen it in little bits, and some see it more and more as the trainings progress, and some have already experienced something on the mat, so they're trying to figure that out. But either way, it's huge shifts. And the shifts of those magnitudes, you know it didn't come from touching your toes. It didn't come from the down dog. It didn't come from... We know what posture it's going to happen in. We know which one. Or two. It's 2 postures. Maybe 3. Maybe 3. You have the experience and you want to know. Or you have the question and you want to know. And then you start getting answers, and then you can practice towards the experience. And it comes in waves. But each one, I can do handstands, I can do splits, forearm stands. I can't put my legs behind my head. No interest to, and herniated discs in my back. Definitely not trying at this age. But all those postures that I can attain and sustain and breathe in, they have no... They're not even a grain of sand on the beaches of the world of bliss that you feel from meditation. If you gathered all the sand in the whole world, deserts even, you brought it all together, that sand still pales in comparison to the divine glories of blissful meditation. So if a handstand is less than a grain of sand, you can see why we're so adamant about teaching the truths of the practice, protecting the truths of the practice, guarding them, and then sharing them, right? Sharing them at the right time with the right people in the right moments, in the right verbiage, in the right lesson, because not every lesson is for everybody, so that they can one day themselves experience that the handstand was just working them somewhere. The split was just working some. Maybe it's just sitting upright. Maybe it's just holding a lunge. It could be any posture, but whatever those postures were, that with their postures, those real practitioners out there, those real yogis and teachers out there, you know what I'm talking about? The postures that those people had to go through, really go through, they were moving that individual internally towards something much, much greater than the external representation of that posture. My goodness. You come down out of that headstand, or you finish a lunge. You know, some people it's just a lunge. They get into a proper lunge. They feel what that feels like. When they come out of it, they won. They overcame doubt. They overcame weakness. They overcame thoughts of fatigue or failure. Those are the kinds of practices they're going to need when they approach meditation. So there is a place for the practice on the mat. And that place is just to get us warmed up. Just to get the snowball rolling. Just to get the bowl rolling down the hill. Truck talk. Ego, ignorance. Why don't other people teach this? Why doesn't everybody approach this? Why is 200 hours watered down? Why is yoga becoming what it is in the West? Can we do anything about it? Keep being the pebble in the pond. If you're watching this, I'm sure you're one of these people. Maybe not, but hopefully you're one of the people that is also of the mind to keep the science sacred. To keep it at a place where it's very special and impactful in people's lives. So keep doing your work. Keep doing the best you can in your work, in your karma. That's all we can do. And devote your work towards that internal unity that you might be seeking, that internal peace that you might be seeking, that self-love that you might be looking for a little bit more. You devote your work to that idea, to the idea of that love. To the idea of devotion. collective. That we all have our own individual roles. We just do our work. We do it the best we can. We don't look to judge the other person doing their work. They're doing their work. They're doing it the best they can. We just trust that part. We just trust that part. But then we put our head down, we go back to work. Karma. And we don't work with expectation of the karma phala. Nope. That part, we have no control over. I can just turn on the stove. I can't make the water boil. I can turn on the stove. So we turn on the stove. We're patient. We watch the water, wait for it to boil. Patient, we trust, we have faith. And we get back to work. So much love to each and every one of you. Thank you guys so much. And I'm supposed to say something like, subscribe, share, hit the notification. Is that a thing? There's a notification thing, isn't there? There is. You know where it is too. Go looking for it right now. If you don't know where it is, go look. There's a little bell or something. It's right around here. You click the bell. Oh my goodness, guys. Yeah. I look forward to sharing with more people. That's why I got to get that in. You know that there's more and more seekers out there. There's people that might not ever approach yoga because of what it's been sold as. And they might miss the benefits. And we can't have that anymore. They're for everybody. Yoga's for everybody. Everybody. What kind of practice you do, that's up to you. But it's for you. Whether you like it or not. All right. Have a beautiful day. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing, hitting the notification thingy. Thank you for all of it. Thank you for all the love and support. Peace, peace, peace.